Yellow Magic Orchestra are a Japanese electropop band. They're basically three guys. They were formed in the late 70s, but they have a fourth kind of member who is a technician, and he was also a technician for a guy called Isao Tomita, who did a lot of interesting electronic synth work in the 70s, doing synth versions of classical music. They were huge in Japan. Back to Yellow Magic Orchestra here. They had a following that was similar to the following that the Beatles had in the late 70s, early 80s. And they've been on and off for the last 44 years. They've had 8 studio albums, which isn't a huge number for that length of time. But they have a huge legacy of influencing electronic dance music, electropop, rave, and all sorts of that sort of thing. Hi, my name's Dan. So this was the second album by the Yellow Magic Orchestra, and it's been hailed as their crowning achievement. So I've not come across them or registered them before. I had heard the name, and I'd seen the name in the list. I had vaguely got the impression that they were earlier than this, that they were kind of late 60s, and that they were more of a hippie band. I don't know where I got that idea from, because I was completely wrong. And then when I listened to this for the first time today, I got a pleasant surprise. It's great. So it's electronic music in the legacy of, I particularly want to bring out Jean Michel Jarre here, who's the reference that most people will know of. It reminds me a bit of Tomita, sometimes known as Isao Tomita. And as I said in the introduction for the band, that's no surprise really, because one of their kind of fourth member was a guy who was a technician for Tomita, and they used a lot the same techniques as Tomita had used. It reminds me as well, bizarrely, of there was a hit single called Popcorn by a band called Hot Butter in the late 70s, which was a poppy electronic thing. Also, shades of Tangerine Dream and Krautrock and things like that. And it's setting a kind of precedent in some ways. It's leading the way for stuff that's going to come after. So it's leading the way for electronic dance music, but also for the kind of electronic ideas of Kraftwerk and Gary Newman and New Order and all that kind of rave scene. This is part of the history of that sort of thing. So it's musically quite interesting. I think I enjoyed it. It's not just synths. Well, I mean, it is synths, but it's not just really simple, straightforward stuff. There's some interesting backing going on. I particularly like the fact that there's bass in here that isn't just a keyboard bass. There's electric bass. And there's some vocoder, and I always like a little bit of vocoder stuff in here. I've always enjoyed this kind of early electronica stuff. It's something that I was into at the time when it was current, which was in my teens, and have played since. And it always amazed me how much some of those early guys could get out of some really quite basic equipment, get some amazing sounds out of it. Most of the tracks are kind of poppy, verging on the dancey kind of side of things. There's a track which I played the bit at the beginning of this review. If it's not been cut out, is Behind the Mask. And when I first heard that, I thought, I recognise this. Where do I know this from? And I know it because it's been covered by Eric Clapton. It's also been covered by Michael Jackson, apparently. There's also on here a odd version of Day Tripper by the Beatles. It's quite an unusual version. But I'm not going to play that on the way out, because normally what I do is at the beginning of the review, I play either the most well-known or the most typical track from the album. Well, it is the most well-known, which is behind the max, but it's not the most typical of the album. So I wanted to play, when we're going on the credits on the way out, something that was more typical of the rest of the album, to give a kind of spread. So, kind of to round this up, I enjoyed this quite a bit, and that's my opinion, and I'd love to know what your opinion is. Please let me know in the comments down below. That's it from me for now.